What's up, guys? Welcome to the Social Bamboo Podcast. Today, I am joined by Dave Neal. Dave is someone that I have found on YouTube. He is a stand-up comic. He is the host of Bachelor Nation News. That is what he's most known for. He's got about 54,000 subscribers on YouTube. He runs some vlogs. He does a bunch of different stuff. So we're going to get into all that today. But Dave, how you doing today, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. I had to have you on because I could see that a lot of what you're doing is a lot of things that I'm trying to do right now in the YouTube world. And you're creating about 5 to 7 videos on some of your higher days. And I reached out to you because it seemed like you were either having about 10 people working for you or you were just doing it all yourself to be able to put it out at that speed. So once you told me that it was just you, I knew there was a lot of good stuff to learn there. So we're going to get into that. But before we jump into the the more tactical stuff, tell us a little bit about your backstory. How did you get started into stand-up comedy and just being an entrepreneur?
Oh, sure. Yeah, everything's really one of those sort of failed upwards or failed into different directions. I, got a degree in business, and then getting into stand-up involved starting, getting fired from the business world. This is like 15 years ago. Getting into acting, which got me into improv comedy, which got me into stand-up, which is my true passion. But it took a few, how do I do this? Well, I like doing that. I like acting, but I really prefer getting laughs. All right, I like improv, but that's kind of culty, and, you have to, practice with a team and all these things. And then once I got to stand up, I was like, oh, this is great. This is me on stage ranting. I can do whatever I want. I can try and fail or whatever. And then that's kind of evolved into my my YouTube channel, which is really just another platform to kind of get whatever I want to talk about off my chest. So getting into YouTube, really, in the last 2 or 3 years is when I've really started studying the people that are really making it work, the Mr. Beasts, and then the different news programs that are like independent news style, where there's very fast turnaround. That's where I kind of found my niche, where I make entertainment news, but I talk about it right away. You don't have to wait till the next day or 2 days later for the content. If it happened, I'm going to have a video out in an hour. And people started relying on that, and they relied on showing up every single day. And for some people, this might give them anxiety to be like, 5 videos a day, this is wild. No post-production. I set it up. Everything's pre-packaged and built in a way that it's ready to go. So all my time goes into making a thumbnail, knowing what I want to talk about, and hitting a couple buttons. And it's really gotten rid of the resistance to creating, because I have a vlog channel and I've done a bunch of other types of like sketch comedies, which can take weeks to produce, getting actors and scripts and money. And I love doing all that, but I've seen zero sort of success on YouTube with that other sort of aspect of sketch comedies and vlogs. Vlogging is very saturated, and why does anyone care what I have to say about anything? So it's when I look at YouTube, I look at information and entertainment and the combination of the two, and that's how you build your following. So a lot of times new followers find me because they want information, and hopefully they stick around because they enjoy my entertainment. But that's kind of like the process that I have now. So in certain videos, if like some crazy spoiler comes out, I go, oh boy, this is going to get recommended by YouTube. Let's be on our best behavior. Let's get the information out first. Let's make it not too long. Let's get it to that perfect Goldilocks spot where where new viewers are going to get to see me. And then maybe once you watch one video, YouTube has a way of recommending all of your stuff to them. So I kind of know when a video might be a big one, and I try to make sure I'm producing that well, but also as timely as possible.
So doing the vlogs and the stand-up comedy, the sketches on YouTube, really hard to get found, at least as your first point of contact with people. You've more found your way of, picking this niche to have, all the search traffic and compete really well in the YouTube algorithm to get your first introduction to people. And then YouTube will push out your Dave Neal vlogs and such like that after they found you from your main content. Is that right?
Well, sort of. I would love the vlogs to get more success, but none of my success within the Bachelor world has transitioned to any of the vlog success, except for like the diehards that follow me. It actually, in some ways, works against my other channels, because then YouTube's like, all right, these people like his Bachelor content, let's show them this. And if I need a normal like 15% click-through rate, I might only get 10% because obviously not everyone's going to want to see what my day's like. They might just want to be there for whatever my news channel is. So it can kind of work against you in some ways, but you know, and that's okay too. When people like want to redirect what their passions are, you can't expect that you're always going to want to talk about the same thing, you know, on YouTube. Like there's Bachelor Fantake, who does a great job of reporting Bachelor content, but his YouTube name is Bachelor Fantake. Now that's good because people know exactly what they're going to get from his YouTube channel. But like when the day comes when he just wants to be, you know, Chris in Canada doing vlogs, that's probably like he would have to do a full rebranding. Whereas my content, it's centered around topics like Bachelor, but it's really like, you either enjoy my entertainment or not. I would rather only play to the people that enjoy the entertainment I bring, because then I might be able to sell them a ticket for stand-up or whatever other ventures I have moving forward. So sort of trying to say, all right, we'll use Bachelor as the bait, but then for the rest of my life moving forward, if they were only there for the Bachelor content, then I'm just not your guy. There's other people that'll do that. I want to be there for your entertainment.
So was there debate on calling that channel Dave Neal versus Dave Neal Bachelor Nation News or something expanded?
I've had this channel for so long that there was no strategy when I started, but I have had other podcasts that had names that weren't my name, and then it's been hard to carry those along with me because content changes. Like you look at someone like Joe Rogan Experience, you know what you're going to get. You know, he can change what he does with his podcast moving forward, but it's his name and his brand. So for my channel, what I learn is YouTube scans your audio. They know what you're saying, and that's partly how they use their tag words to find out what to do with your content. So right up front, I need to hammer down my name and what I'm going to talk about. And then when I have created new channels, it has helped that like I can bring my name to new channels, and YouTube will recognize, all right, these people already listen to him here, they might listen to him there. But as I said before, if I try to promote a new channel that's like, you know, my dog and me, yeah, I'm not going to get too many of those people to come over. But my new channel, The Dave Neal Show, it's the same format as my Bachelor content, but for non-Bachelor news. So I've actually had a lot of success with that in the first month because I'm not changing up the script too much. And like I love making vlogs, but they say for like every minute of vlog, there's probably an hour of editing. So for like Vlogmas, I was creating a video every day just for Christmas related content, along with my other 3 to 5 videos. I was going insane. And that takes hours to edit. I love doing it, but I can just make a video with 0 editing and it'll get 50 times the views. So I've just been following those breadcrumbs and doing what's been working.
Did the vlogging come in with Tasha, or is that something you were doing before?
Vlogging's something where I've done it in the past, and I used to have my main channel, which has the 50,000+ subscribers. YouTube gives you different playlists that you can use. So it's like, great, I can put my podcast here, my vlogs here, my stand-up clips here. It just doesn't work that way. There's too many different topics that I'm now considering making a new channel altogether that's just my stand-up clips. I already have them up on my main channel, but that whole audience doesn't translate to this other audience. So I'm having a hard time. Once your channel's monetized, I know the struggle of getting to monetize and getting the 1,000 views and 4,000 watch hours. Now I can kind of get that within a couple weeks when I have a new channel. So it was almost easier to start Dave Neal Show and Dave Neal Vlogs as separate YouTube channels, even if they're not going to make that much money, because they'll do better on their own channel than they would if they were on my main channel. I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah. It kind of hurts your engagement if you post content that doesn't do as well. So it feels like you're affecting the channel when you're posting slightly off-topic stuff that dividing it out might just do better.
Right. So when I created Dave Neal Show just a month ago, I was like, listen, people, don't come to this channel unless you're going to click on the videos. Like, I don't want you. I don't want people to support this if they're actually not interested. I'd rather have 1,000 people that are really interested in this content versus 2,000, because in the end, subscribers don't mean anything. Now, obviously, I want to get to 100,000. I want the silver play button. I want the verification. It doesn't mean anything. This past year in 2021, I made the most money I ever made in a month was when I only had about 9,000 subscribers. I went from like 6,000 to 50,000 in 2021. So it's really about watch time and how loyal your audience is going to be. And, there's people I know that have channels with 500,000 subscribers. I know for a fact I outperform them because it's hard to make content. So I'm kind of in the place now as a comedian where it's like, well, as much as I would love to make these epic vlogs and some other content out on the road, I'm able to find more success doing what really is important to me, which is ranting and coming up with jokes on the fly and, having fun, which not all my content does. Like, you have to kind of massage the sensitive topics. And like this week, the whole week I'm talking about Ukraine. It's just a tragedy what's happening. How do I make fun of this stupid TV show we watch? How do I bridge the two? And that's kind of the battle sometimes, is like staying core to my authentic humor of what I want to talk about, but also understanding that people are going to digest my content in their own time. So like, let's not be insensitive or whatever that case may be.
So the Dave Neal show is the one that's been covering some of the Ukraine events?
No, actually, so
the Dave Neal channel.
I've been talking about it so far only through the Bachelor Nation lens, like when Bachelor Nation people comment on it. So here's what I've learned, right? I can talk about whatever I want, but in a Bachelor related video, that being my main niche, the thumbnail and the title I have to respect that and deliver on that topic. Now, I just got in this long fight with some commenter who's like, you spent 7 minutes before you talked about the title. And it's like, yeah, it's called trying, and you could look at it as trying to milk out a video, but it's not milking so much as you want to extend the audience as long as possible while keeping them engaged for as long as possible. That's the key to YouTube success: viewer duration, and will they come back? Now, people know if they're going to watch one of my videos, they call them like mealtime videos, that it's not going to be done in 2 minutes. I can't remember the last time I made a 2-minute video. It's going to be, I'm going to aim for 8 minutes at the minimum, because that's when you get to add extra ad revenue. So when your video, it used to be 10+ minutes, but now it's 8. So if a video is 8 minutes long, you can add different ad breaks within your video. Totally fair to do. And then I think usually 10 to 14 minutes is where I really feel comfortable with the video. But again, earlier today, I had a 27-minute long video. That's just what it took to get through it. I've listened to 9-hour-long podcasts before. If it's a good topic, people will stick around. But yeah, so like on this past video, we'll talk about, it was almost foolish to not bring up Ukraine on the Bachelor channel because it's so important and it's so like, it shows how trivial what we talk about is. So, but I've done that with all sorts of topics that can be kind of heavy, where like we'll it's almost like a cage fight is the Bachelor Nation, and then what spills into the audience is whatever I decide is worth talking about. And what you kind of learn, I think, is that if people are going to come to me for entertainment, it doesn't always mean funny stuff, but it means whatever's on my mind, whatever energy I can bring to it that's important to me is going to be the best version of myself that day, even if it's not what the audience wants. If I decide not to talk about Ukraine when I want to talk about it, I'm silencing myself, and that's like just not going to make a good video. Now, there's obviously topics that are like such bummers that I don't want to bring them up, but obviously that's one that literally the whole globe is sort of invested in that's worth talking about.
How do you do it with stand-up right now for mentioning the Ukraine situation? Do you have, I don't know exactly what I'm asking here. How do you approach these when the current events are to this level of catastrophicness? Do you still mention them in all of your stand-up sets, or is there a level that you ever just don't bring them up, or just how do you draw that line of where you actually are comfortable talking about it?
Well, good question. Stand-up's, I think, way harder. It's a way harder thing to do good stand-up, to do it well. That would, I'm not going to go on stage. I think I brought it up the other day trying to talk about something, but generally I don't talk about much current events in my act anyway, just because you come up with some, great joke about, whatever, Cuba. And then a week later, the joke, the news is gone. I don't have monologue jokes, like a late night jokes. It's not really my thing. If I think about something before I get on stage, sometimes I'll be compelled to talk about it depending on the audience. But that's something, the Ukraine stuff with my YouTube channel, easier to talk about because I'm not making light of it. Whereas stand up, usually my comedy's a lot lighter. It's more personal, stuff going on. So I don't really bring up too much heavy stuff in that regards with stand-up. But, if there's something going on in the room, it's kind of hard to avoid it. So you never know. But I have to remind myself continuously, like I'm doing this corporate gig. Or here's a good example. I did a show a couple months ago that was a private Bachelor show for this audience that wasn't my audience. They were there for a book signing, and it was like an afternoon show. It was just really the worst conditions to do stand-up. And I did a joke I shouldn't have done. I knew I shouldn't have done it. And I just was so mad at myself after because it wasn't the proper audience to understand the context of the joke. And you have to remember that all the time with comics is that there's just this set list in your head. It's never like, I'm going to do this set of jokes. You're constantly playing the jukebox as you're talking out loud, thinking, oh, they like this, they might like that. And then sometimes you go too far, you try to double down or something, you come off wrong, and you can feel the energy suck out of the room. I don't have that issue with YouTube because I'm not just trying to get laughs the whole time. So the dynamic's different. YouTube knows we can have fun, but I can also go on some rants and talk about some things that are more important to me. And I think that translates better than if I just did that in stand-up.
What would you say is your absolute favorite form of content that is like the most purest you, if there was no tactical side of producing content to consider of, you know, oh, I better come out with this on Bachelor Nation News just because there's a bunch of clicks on it. It's what everyone wants to know about. Stand up, it sounds like you're really designing your content to the audience as you go. Is YouTube rants like your most pure form and favorite content to do?
I think it's a good question. I think it's the quickest. Well, here's what I've learned about myself. We all have like different levels of resistance, like procrastination, and we resist things we love. So if you really love a clean house, you might never want to open your closet because you know it's not clean and you don't want to deal with it. So we just resist. I resisted proposing because I couldn't afford a ring, and I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine my life going to the next step. When I proposed, then we're going to get married and kids, and it was like, oh my gosh, you resist things you love. So I have a hard time making long form content because I don't get that gratification right away. So it's the same reason a lot of actors love live theater and comics love live comedy. With the content I make, I can get that response, you know, right away versus like this screenplay that's been sitting on my desk for 2 years that I can't seem to finish because it involves so much more preparation. So I'm essentially coming to my YouTube channel and loving that I can come every day with a new hurdle and I can bring my point of view to it, and it's not requiring me boatloads of effort because the thing I'm learning that people are coming back for is just to hear my take on something. They're not coming back to hear me give the most eloquent dissertation of Ukrainian, you know, diplomacy. They want to hear kind of like, you know, just my opinion on things. So so on the day-to-day, I look at stories or headlines, and sometimes it might just be a tweet. I might turn a tweet into 15 minutes. And my fiance will always be like, Dave, you ramble so much. And you go, well, on YouTube, that kind of pays the bills because you can start with a tweet. You can play fun at it, pick it apart. You can do some research on it. So I feel like there's a framework that exists within the news that allows me to give, you know, it's much easier to, like, I'm having trouble almost with the Dave Neal show because I don't have the structure that Bachelor has and I don't have the through line. So every day I'm like, what the hell do I want to talk about? I'm talking about Kanye. I'm talking about Tom Brady. It's all over the place. But I'm also not being hard on myself because it's only been a month, and I'm sure I'll have certain pop Hollywood storylines I'll want to keep talking about. But yeah, with Bachelor, it gives me just enough of a framework like a stand-up audience gives a comedian, because you can like be like, all right, what do you want to talk about? You know, there's something that kind of guides me with, you know, with the format that I have now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like you're setting it up so that you can talk about whatever you want on any day, because how else are you going to be passionate to talk about anything else than what you want to talk about on that day? And then whether that content is suited for Dave Neal channel or the Dave Neal show or your new stand-up set, or throw that in your screenplay or whatever form of content you're putting out. It sounds like you've just got all these avenues so that you always have a place that you can, you know, put your content that is appropriate for it.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get to a place where I reel back on what I'm giving YouTube and spend more time on longer term projects. It feels like it's just one explosion firework after another. My content's not evergreen. So what you get is only going to be good for 48 hours, sometimes a little bit longer. People will go back and watch my old videos, but the the ad revenue really favors newer viewers with what I do, at least. So I don't have that luxury of like dropping a video and then it gets 8 million views throughout the year. It's kind of like, boom, it's done, keep going. But I probably work 6 to 8 hours a day making content, which is, no complaints whatsoever. If I could kind of get the same result and do that in 2 to 3 hours, that would definitely free up time for the screenplays and all the other things I'm neglecting. Because there's a ton I'm neglecting. Since the pandemic, I have felt in so many ways like my stand-up has suffered, and it has for other reasons, not getting, as many live shows. But now I'm kind of like, all right, how do I bring back that, my first love, stand-up, and use the YouTube, which pays the bills, but I also enjoy. I haven't burned out in a way that I probably could have doing this, because I generally, I love the things I talk about. If anyone's starting a YouTube channel, if you don't love Airstreams and you want to start a channel renovating Airstreams, good luck, buddy. There's going to be hard days doing that. So you have to really have a thirst for whatever it is you're going to talk about, because, you might spend a couple years talking about it, figuring out how to build the, the neural pathways to make you really good. Because in the end, the difference between somebody whose channel takes off and doesn't take off might just be somebody who's been talking about that topic longer, has a little bit more expertise, is more camera friendly, a little better at Photoshop, a nicer camera, their sound doesn't suck. It can be something so simple that gets your viewer retention past that threshold where YouTube is going to promote it. Because in the end, the only thing you really want is to show up you want YouTube to recommend your content. You don't want to get 7 views every video because only your 7 friends are watching. You want YouTube to say, oh, shoot, you make videos about RVs? Well, we have a whole crowd of millions of people that love this content. And then in the end, YouTube, as like any business, only wants to hire people and promote people that are going to do a good job. So if your account's not getting recommended yet, you just got to keep pushing to figure out what it is that's going to get it recommended and then ride that wave when it comes.
Yeah, you definitely got to choose a niche that you're passionate about so you can keep coming out with content for years, because a lot of it is just sticking with it for a long time. You said in 2021, you went from 9,000 subscribers to where you're at now, 54,000, is that right?
2021, put it this way, mid-2020, I had probably under 3,000. And then late 2020 to early 2021 is when it leapt from like 3,000 to 10,000. And that leap happened in a couple months span where it was a huge, like new amount of viewers, and it took off right away. Now it's been more like trying to convert people that watch my channel that aren't subscribed, although it doesn't really matter. YouTube doesn't care if you're subscribed to my channel or not. If you're going to click on the videos, they're going to keep showing them. So I have to tell plenty of people, like, look, I'll show them the stats. Hey, 60% of you guys are subscribed. There's 40,000 people are not subscribed to my channel, because I get about 100,000 viewers that don't watch every video, but about 100,000 different people right now, and about 60% of those are subscribed. So there's a lot of people out there that aren't subscribed, but YouTube doesn't care. YouTube will kill your account if you have 1 million subscribers and you stop delivering what that audience wants. So there's definitely some sort of psychology to work through when it comes to being authentic, not burning out, doing what you love, but also finding that audience that's going to appreciate that. That's why if you're like a fraud or like, I guess I'll get into finance because that's what does well, if you really don't enjoy numbers. So this is all hard and overwhelming for like new tubers, because you go, you might spend a month kind of editing a product that's going to get 4 views, but you have to remember that's like a seed you're planting. You're learning how to edit. My channel didn't take off till I learned Photoshop. I had my channel for years before I learned Photoshop and could properly make a dynamic thumbnail,
Like you were using Canva before? Like that switch, the Canva to Photoshop switch, or are you just saying graphic design in general?
Canva's okay, but graphic design in general. I mean, I wasn't even doing that. I was doing like choose a still. Like, they give you like the 3 stills you could use. I wasn't doing anything. And then what I started to do for my Bachelor content is I'd find like the most salacious photo, Matt James is in a jacuzzi with a contestant. boom, clip that. That'd be my thumbnail photo. Because it used to be that like, ooh, people, you know, the internet's full of hornballs. They'd click on it. Well, my audience is 92% women now. So that, and YouTube, along with Google, you know, owned by Google, scans your image. And if there's too much cleavage or too much sexuality, it's probably not going to get monetized anyway. YouTube likes close-ups of faces. They like to see your teeth, smiles, emotions, because they're scanning it. They're scanning your thumbnail and the words in your thumbnail, and they're trying to say something. So one thing that started really hitting with my channel is if someone tweeted something, rather than just say, so-and-so tweeted something, I'd put a thumbnail of them, and then I learned how to crop out whatever they tweeted and stick it in so it looked like really like nice and authentic. And I had one video take off, and it's probably still my highest performing video. And I don't think that would have happened, but my click-through rate was 26%. So immediately YouTube was like, oh shoot, people are watching this. Plus it was a 24-minute long video. So my retention rate was extraordinary on that video. And that was the first video of mine that I think that started to pass YouTube's algorithm and led to tens of thousands of new subscribers. It wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the right thumbnail, which had nothing to do with the content of the video, other than I found a better way to show people what I was about to talk about and then delivered on it.
And now you pretty much do that thumbnail like every chance you get. Whenever it's covering a tweet, you're using that same kind of format, right?
Yeah, and sometimes I won't have access to a message that was sent, but there'll be like a quote. Like if it's an Us Weekly article, the quote says, you know, whatever it says, I'll text that to myself, screen grab it, and put it into a thumbnail just to show that it existed. Even like, so whatever I can do to create the best visual pop to show people this is what we're going to talk about. I think audiences got bored with just that one big title, like, wow, you know, I think people got kind of duped by clickbait. So I try to give them as much content, but I can overdo it. Sometimes I'm just putting way too much stuff in a thumbnail. It's just so overwhelming that I'm constantly evolving how I do that. Do I change the font color? Do I add this? You know, and sometimes I'll post, you know, a thumbnail. Like I posted one today that I'm like, oh, this isn't going to do well, but whatever, throw it up. You know, you can only spend, you know, like perfection is the enemy of good. You can only spend so much time doing it, but every one of my thumbnails, if I didn't know what I was doing, those would have taken like literally 4 or 5 hours to make each of them. And then you just learn how to do it. I go on YouTube and look at all these tutorials, and now I can make a good, like robust thumbnail in 20 minutes that I think would cost me a lot of money if I had to pay someone else to do it. So yeah, like the idea we talked about before, it's like learning how to do the other aspects of your channel. I have doodads and stream decks and roadcasters and lights. I have all these things I knew nothing about, but every time I saw somebody that was creating content in a way that I found could be advantageous to me, I just learned how to do that. So with the guy, Meet Kevin, he was doing these live streams, and you could see the different sort of scenes that they were cutting. And once I found out that they were doing that live, I was like, this is great. All my audience cares about is that they can hear me. These are mealtime videos. They're breastfeeding, they're walking the dog, they're chopping onions. People don't want to be on their phone. That's why like YouTube Shorts, I think, is not going to work out well, because I personally, if I'm looking to go chop onions and get ready to make dinner, I don't want a 6-minute video. I want a 14-minute video or a 20-minute video. I want something I can play and not have to touch, and I can do some other things. And so that's kind of like the market I try to kind of fit into. But I realize, all right, if my graphics aren't great, the thumbnail, I want good graphics. But if the graphics in the video aren't that great, as long as my audio is good, that's really all that matters to them.
Do you ever go back to your thumbnails that aren't performing as well and change them? I would guess not, just because you're so news-based, and after a you know, like you said, 48 hours, it largely is done. So for me, I go back through my videos because I'm trying to rank on page 1 on certain Instagram teaching topics, and I'll mess with the thumbnails to no end until they're working. Do you just you're just done once it's out?
You know, yes and no. So now my current content, I almost never adjust, but sometimes like right away, I'll be like, oh, this isn't performing well. This, like, I'll make a thumbnail and then I'll see it on the screen. I'll be like, oh, no. And then I'll readjust it. If it's already been a couple days, it's like it's long gone. I did have one video I made. It's over 10 years old. It has nothing to do with my channel. It's an old sketch comedy I made. And about 2 years ago, I readjusted the title, and I added some different keywords that I didn't have access to that knowledge at the time. and I adjusted the thumbnail. And believe it or not, that old video made about over $1,000. And so it can happen. You can have, but that's a very evergreen video. It's an old sketch comedy. So once YouTube started recommending that, it was like, all right, I've left it up because it's made money. But at the same time, anybody who watches that old video isn't going to subscribe and then necessarily appreciate my new content. It's so different. So, you know, I've heard of people taking down old videos because it's not their current content. I haven't gone that far. Although there are some videos I've taken down that no longer get views anymore. And I'm like, this isn't, if they're not making me any money and I don't enjoy the production value I used to have, I'll take them down for that reason.
I have a video that's doing really well, and I came out with it about 2 years ago on how to start a print-on-demand store, which is just a means of starting an e-commerce business where you can list your products and make your designs on there, and then when people buy them, the company prints it out and ships it out. It's just like how to start one of those businesses. And at this time, that business opportunity is pretty saturated, and how I would do it is completely different. So I'm like debating tearing down that video, but it's also one of my best performing videos, and I'm still trying to get my 4,000 watch hours to get monetized and everything. So I've been kind of debating that too. I'm going to leave it up for now, but really I'm like at the point where I'm like, no one should follow this old video. So I feel like in good ethics, I should take it down. So I'll do it once I get monetized. Yeah.
I say keep it up and get those watch hours. And I think if somebody, if someone's looking at a video that's 4 years old on how to, pick an iPhone lock. Clearly, it's not gonna. No, that's on them if they don't find something newer. But yeah, what I find people doing every year is they'll reinvent old content that worked. So like Catherine Manning is really good at helping people create their YouTube channel and their YouTube brand. She made a video like how to make a YouTube channel in 2020. It kind of became very popular to add the year in because that's an advantage. If it's January 1st, 2020, you'd rather be like, all right, let's listen to this person. And some people will redo that same video every year. What I've learned, and this is one reason why I'm very appreciative of my format. You see these some information channels, they just run out of stuff to talk about. And that's something that it can be very challenging when you're like a vlogger and you're like, oh geez, what am I going to even talk about? I've done it all. I've done every like time lapse, making a macchiato. So I think to recycle content when you learn more, absolutely make a new version of it. Make a new version with some of the same tag words and or find out why you think people watch the first one. I started finding that Bachelor recap was a huge tag word for me. Now I'm at the place where my name is a big tag word because YouTube recognizes that I say my name a lot. So they go, all right, Dave Neal, which
is why you're on the show.
Yeah, that's it, right? But Bachelor recap is still good. And even if it's like a Bachelorette video, I might include Bachelor recap in the tag words. The tag words are really less important now than they've ever been. But, I would, if you feel strongly that you should take down that old video, that might be content. Why I want to take down my video where X, Y, and Z. And then you kind of just explain, look, this changed. This is why it changed. Being an expert isn't about being like be all, know all. It's being able to change. Here's why I got the stock market wrong. We're going to talk about this. I hate to say it, but I almost love it when I have a spoiler that's wrong. Spoiler videos do really well. Yeah. If someone's like, oh, Jennifer's an ex-bachelorette. All right, let's run with it. Well, what you want to elicit some sort of reaction from your audience because you want comments. And what I realized before I ever did Bachelor content was I was never getting any comments on anything. It's very hard to you got to log in on YouTube. You have to have an account. It's hard to get a YouTube comment. When I started creating Bachelor stuff, I would get all these comments from people and I was starting to really look at what's making people want to talk about this. Well, I'm talking about one of the last water cooler shows that exist. It's not dumped. All the episodes aren't dumped together like Netflix. So every week you get 6.5 days where people can really talk about stuff. And that's what's helped my channel kind of grow. With other channels, finding new ways to get people to comment, living in the comment section, responding to everybody. Just very valuable ways to try to build as many connections. And if you're in sales, the longer you're trying to sell a product to someone, the higher the chances that they're going to buy it because they have this time invested. So I try to find ways to invest my time with my audience, knowing it's going to it's going to, whether it's through the algorithm or just through their own psyche, make them want to invest more time in my channel, you know? So it's kind of just, there's no quick building of the channel, but you got to almost treat, like I treat my audience the way I did when I had 1,000 followers, even though it's 50 times that now. I just can't get to all the comments, but I try to remember first names. I try to, you know, to make it sound like it's a two-way convo, which works out better now with my channel than when I've done previous things, because I am talking right to the camera and I am really talking to somebody. I just don't know who they are, you know?
Yeah. So let's talk about your niche. For those of you that don't know, Dave covers the show The Bachelor. If you don't know what that show is, if it's not in your country, it's a really popular dating show in America. And like Dave mentioned, he's got a 92% female audience. Dave and I make up part of that 8%. It's actually a really good show. I think anyone who says it's not a good show is they just haven't seen it, and they're just convinced that they don't like it for some reason, or maybe they came in on the wrong season or something. But it's an entertaining show, and that's how I met Dave. So Dave, how did you get started in this niche specifically?
I still have the first video somewhere. I might have unlisted it just because these old videos weren't monetized. But I literally was at my fiance's parents' house in Kentucky, Christmas break. And I don't know. I always have opinions when I watch the show. I think what's worked out for my channel is because less guys watch the show, there's less guys talking about the show. Now, there is still a lot of competition in the Bachelor world. I used to compete against these other guys, and I'd always look at how many views were they getting versus how many I was getting. I always felt like I was better. Yeah, you always feel like you've got better content, but I was like, why are they getting more? Why are they getting into the system? And then I had to kind of figure out all of the rules, the unwritten rules that exist within the YouTube community, so I could like sort of get approved by YouTube for being featured. But so I got into it just sort of randomly, and it turned into not missing a season, you know, and you know, I've traveled to different parts of the world and did my recaps from abroad. And it was just a weekly thing. And then when the Bachelor season was over, I would close my laptop and I would be done making content. I used to include a lot of post-production in my videos. I've nearly taken all of that out. I just realized people didn't care if I spent 3 hours editing a video. For the most part, they just didn't care. It didn't stop anyone from watching.
You used to clip it out, do jump cuts?
I used to not do, I've always prided myself on no jump cuts. The only time you'll ever see a jump cut is if I had some sort of technical issue. So if there is a jump cut, it's because a light went out or something and I had to clip it in post. But what I used to do was whatever I was referencing, I would take photos of the TV throughout the episode, clip them up and put them in this. I was doing this on iMovie, which is super slow. Now at least I have a blazing fast computer so I can process things faster. But I just realized people don't need, if I'm going to talk about so-and-so jumping in a bunch of, you know, grape, you know, if they're going to be mushing grapes at some vineyard, you don't need to see the gif of it, right? We all watched the show. So I've just kind of stopped investing and also Bachelor recaps, which was my bread and butter, is now my least watched aspect of my Bachelor content. Just because there's a lot of recaps.
Like the recap of each individual episode?
Yeah, it's almost like an aftersight. It's like, get this out of the way. It'll still get views, and maybe those are what get the new viewers, because new viewers are searching for Bachelor recaps. But whenever, look, I pride myself in this, because I've been on the side where no one was watching my content, but I think my channel has the most YouTube views of any Bachelor channel. I also make the most content, so not saying that I've like cornered the market, but I pride myself in that. Now, with that said, whenever like people will recommend Bachelor content, my name is never brought up in the list, which is okay because the numbers speak for themselves that my audience is there. But like everyone's like, oh, this podcast is great.
You're the only non-former contestant.
One of them, yeah. I'm really, and I used to have people post things like, you know, because the internet's just a cesspool. People would post things like, why do we care what you have to say? Who the hell are you? I'd get that for years. And now when I say something, people will say, oh, well, Dave Neal says this, and they'll kind of use it against me. And it's like, I thought we didn't care what I had to say. I really am just somebody who watches the show, but I also don't belong to that club. So when there's something worth calling out, I'm not gonna have a problem calling it out because they don't pay my bills. So well, we all have bias.
Did you ever apply to be on the show?
No. Tasha and I have been together for about 8 years. It was never even, I probably wasn't even watching, probably because I wasn't watching TV when I was single. I feel like that's, as soon as I started dating, we just settled down on the couch. But no, I would have. I know people that have done the show. It just didn't seem, and again, I would be, I don't think I'm the type that they want. I don't think I would have done well with their manipulation. They kind of want someone who's going to say and do everything that they want. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe I'd be the biggest villain on the show. Who knows?
You probably would have to succumb to some extra rules if you were a former contestant. I don't know how much they're still under contract after the show is over of like what they can and can't say. Do you know?
Well, they have usually
is there a lot of restrictions?
The contestants have a 1-year contract, and then the leads have a 2-year contract. But they sign essentially a lifetime contract that they're not going to like slam the show with the secrets of the show. So even if it's, you know, a couple of years since they've been on the show, they can talk freely about their experience, but they can't say like, well, the fantasy suite constructs of X, Y, and Z. So those secrets are kind of locked down. They've sued people. But yeah, I mean, I know Reality Steve was sued by from a spoiler he had, but that's because he offered to pay. And again, I could be wrong, but I believe he talked to me this. He offered to pay for a spoiler. And I guess you can't offer to pay somebody to break their end of a contract. There's some rule there. But anyway, for the most part, like if people want to tell me things, it might hurt. Like I know a couple contestants from this season that wanted to share some information with me, but they had to do it in a way that the producers wouldn't know it was them, because the producers can hold over putting them on future shows. So a lot of the contestants want to go on Bachelor in Paradise, the summer version of The Bachelor. And if you don't play by the show's rules, they're not going to bring you back because you didn't play by the rules. So they have a way of sort of coercing people to continue to play by their game, which directly works against what I do, which is call out a lot of the manipulation. And it's like, we all get we're watching reality. Reality actually means some form of scripted, highly edited content. So I'm constantly just reminding people that just because someone said something doesn't mean that they actually said it or what the context was. And, we all watch. What happens is we all watch the same show, those that watch it, and then we all have wildly different viewpoints. So-and-so's the villain. Actually, I think so-and-so's the hero. They gaslit her. No, she gaslit him. We all just watch the show and I think like it because we project how we would act in it as if it's some sort of like, role play video game.
Like when people watch those social response shows where they'll say like, would you help this kid who is being bullied? What is it called? Like, what would you do?
Yeah,
or something like that.
And
then everyone watches. They're like, oh, I totally would have helped in that situation. Or
that's what The Bachelor
is. I think
is.
we all like to think we would act a certain way, but it's like, yeah, if you're in the moment and emotions are high and you're 8 beers deep, you might not do that.
And if you're on the show, the biggest thing is the sleep deprivation. That's the biggest thing. Lack of sleep that will create people to do foolish things. It's what cults do. It's what
don't get as drunk on the show anymore. I feel like
they're only allowed.
They don't get drunk on the show anymore as much as they used to.
They're only allowed a certain amount of drinks because they had some like serious sexual assault allegations that were then found to be. The person was found to be innocent, but it was enough that people were really drunk and they were like, we can't be having people this drunk. But they still are allowed to drink a little bit. And again, with a week or 2 or 3 weeks of not having enough sleep and the pressure of it, people, they get emotional. It's the quickest way to have your mental health go down. And that's exactly what they like. They start production early. They shine lights into rooms. They wake people up. They don't want you sleep. They don't want you getting extra sleep. I mean, that doesn't help them create drama.
So there's a lot of people listening that want to start their own YouTube channels and, they might have a show or some other kind of topic that they could essentially apply the same format that you do with The Bachelor to one of their niches. What would be some pointers that you'd have if someone was maybe wanting to cover a different TV show as to like where they get their ongoing stream of content? Or is it mostly from you just following all these different contestants and then you're actively like looking at their stories and trying to be like the first person to report on it? Is a lot of this just being a news reporter in your industry and you're like the first person to get there? Is that a lot of where the early success comes from?
Well, where my success is now is highly dependent on my audience sending, like if I'm not like say if I'm out at lunch and I get 7 DMs from people I've never met before, my phone starts lighting up. I'll be like, oh boy, we have a breaking news story. Like, people love to send me stuff. But there's just communities, obviously Reddit. Reddit is the biggest and easiest community to look at what's trending because it's a simple upvote, downvote, so you know what's hot. I generally like to look for like what the newest content is, so a lot of times I'll just Google Bachelor or look on Twitter because there's a lot of quick, the content comes out so fast. With people that are looking to start a show, I think the quickest way to get discouraged is to not see early success. So I think I recommend people try to pick a production schedule you can stick to. If you want to recap Survivor and if you love Survivor, just do 1 video a week. Try to make 1 good video a week. I don't know, if Survivor's on a Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, if you have Wednesday, you want to be as, when it comes to commentary channels, you want to be as quick to the response as possible. No one wants to see it, talk about the Lost finale 10 years later. You got to be there for it. But also, I think a lot of people, like I said before, perfection is the enemy of good. People want something to be perfect, but as you know, when you're building your audience, you just need to get content out. Now, that doesn't mean show up with horrible audio and look bad. Try your best, but, it might take 2 or 3 seasons to talk about, storage wars before you become the storage wars expert. Next thing you know, you're going to be getting Tupperware sponsors and you're like the big, padlock guy. All these opportunities come. Well, it's because you built a lot of knowledge about storage wars. So for me, I did this for several years before, and I would literally forget these contestants' names after the season ended. And then once I started going full time, it became much easier to study for the test because I have never stopped studying. So I can rattle off all this random info. And again, I don't know it all, but I can rattle off all this random info from the last years because I made 5 videos a day on it. But if I understand people, no one should go 0 to 5 videos a day. So I think people find a topic you really light up talking about and then find a way to have a clean camera and clean audio and learn how to edit.
So the end goal is you're still mostly trying to propel your stand-up comedy career or just comedy career in general. I don't even know if I should say stand-up comedy just because it's so much on YouTube now. Should I say stand-up comedy career is like that the main thing to get like a Netflix special, or what would be like the next major milestone that everything you're doing is really accumulating to?
So it's a good question. Stand-up's a long arching, it takes... You can have early success. You can break late. It's the perfect example of like equity and time put in equals time put out. So I could care less about a Netflix special. Most comics only do a special because it gets new audience to see them that will see them live. Most comics make their money from live stand-up. So my biggest goal would be able to say, hey, I'm going to do a show in Cincinnati and I want to sell out the room. And that's being able to do that because you have a fan base that will come to a show is like huge power. And I don't mean that in some sort of like egotistical way. All you want as a comic is to get people to show up to your seats. Now, if someone's got like 1 million TikTok followers, I don't view TikTok to be like a really strong audience. You might get, they might follow you, but like my audience, we raised more for the Toys for Tots drive than any of the former Bachelor contestants did for the charities they ran for Christmas. And that's like a point of pride. These audience members listen to me every single day. We got people in Switzerland and Ethiopia and Florida, literally all over the world, mainly, US and like UK colonies, mainly English-speaking places. But literally, we get phone calls from Pakistan and all these random places. And they, every single day, when it's time to do whatever they need to do for like, whenever it's time for them to garden and listen to YouTube or whatever they do, they choose me. So that's something like that's huge, like a huge point of pride that you don't want to just give away. So I'm always going to want to perform to that audience and then slowly translate a portion of them to live shows. So I could care less about Netflix, could care less about some of those other, stand-up things that you have to do because you're promoting your comedy, and more like the equity that comes from having my own audience and letting me perform where I want. I mean, hey, maybe I want to go to Amsterdam. I hear Paris has a really good English stand-up comedy theater too. Like, these are all places a lot of comics will go to, different parts of the world and perform for like expatriates, and to have an audience that would come see you perform is the quickest way to to get hired, really.
Yeah, if they know you can already sell a bunch of the tickets for them, then obviously it's a lot easier for them to book you than them thinking they have to be responsible for selling out the whole show themselves. And nowadays, there's before someone sees a comic, I was just talking to my friend last week who was going to see one. She's like, "Oh, I'll check his YouTube to see if I want to go." And it's such a different process nowadays that like that digital presence is almost required. It's not just like a different way of being a stand-up comic nowadays. It's just kind of like the way to go. I guess that's probably one of the last points I'll touch on here is just in the stand-up comic route. What would you say is YouTube? How much would you say it factors into comic success moving forward? And what would be your advice for those kind of people?
I mean, it's a huge tool. So if I'm going to go out and do a stand-up show, I always bring my nice camera, almost always, unless I know the show's trash. There's certain shows and I'm like, all right, I'm not, if the show is actually good, I'll shoot with my iPhone, but I'll bring my like really nice camera to a lot of shows, and I've already got the content I'm making on stage. Now I'm going to capture it. If something fun happens, I'll put it online. But there's plenty of comics that don't have a YouTube channel or don't do any social media, and they're real killers. But you're just leaving a potential audience. You're kind of leaving it on the table. A lot of people, guys like Andrew Schultz, I mean, they sell out arenas because of their YouTube following, and they weren't, it's kind of a result of not having control over comedy clubs, bookers, Comedy Central. You've got all these gatekeepers that exist, and if they don't accept you, but the internet does, go with the internet. Your money's worth. You're much better having, like, I know really good comics that released their special just on YouTube, because if you get 1 million views on a YouTube special versus 1 million on a Comedy Central special, they're going to follow you when you post your next clip and your tour dates. So I feel like the next like Internet 3.0 is really having ownership. I mean, I've had so many companies that want to like manage my account, and they all want a piece of something. But, right before, I know I'm kind of all over the place. Right before the pandemic, I auditioned for, I believe it was it was E! News. And it was like a green screen, teleprompter, read the lines, make some jokes. I had the teleprompter guy laughing. It was it was the most cliche Hollywood audition where like the casting director walks me out. We're laughing. See you later, Dave. Oh, bye, Barbara. And then everyone else in the waiting room is like, geez, he must have crushed it. That doesn't happen often. That's what happened. Never heard back. The world shuts down. I spend the year 2020 making a bunch of random content, and finally something takes off, and I'm like, that's it. I don't need E! News. I don't need AfterBuzz TV, which is now defunct, which they wouldn't even take me. I don't need these places. I'm actually making more money producing this content on my own, and too often we rely on these gatekeepers. Well, I want to audition for this type of news. Be your own news channel. Be your own journalist. That's the world that we're shifting into. Find out how to carve out your niche, be competent, be trustworthy and likable, and provide some sort of value through entertainment or information. And honestly, it's almost like it's not if you're going to succeed, it's just when.
Yeah, I definitely am all about that philosophy of, if someone's already done it before and you're willing to stick with it and put daily action to it, it really is just a matter of when. It definitely is hard to always fully believe that on all the days where you're putting in 3 hours to make the thumbnail and getting 7 views after a week. And I was talking to Dave before the show started. I'm at like 800 subscribers on YouTube, and it's taken me like 2 years and like 3 months and 95 videos to get there. And not until recently did I finally get one over 10K views. It's just such a long road. So you really got to choose something that you're passionate in. And either way, would you say you've really enjoyed the process? Has that been really a key part of what's going on, is like even through the dark times, like you were still really enjoying what you were doing? It sounds like you've always had such a love for stand-up comedy and everything you're doing.
Yeah, like I've always enjoyed making content, but it is soul-sucking to enjoy making content. You hit upload, and then you just refresh your phone and nobody's watching. I totally get that. With stand-up comedy, I'm happy if I get 4 people in the audience. Obviously, it feels a little bit better when there's 100. If you get a big audience laughing, that's fun too. But with stand-up, you kind of appreciate the process. You get the instant gratification that you don't always get on YouTube. But I can tell you, what I've learned, and for people that are getting started in YouTube, look at your analytics. Why are people not watching your videos longer? Why aren't they clicking on them if you think they've got, YouTube will give a lot of people a shot. So if it's like, you got to just like look at what's not working and just improve on it. And the pandemic afforded me the chance to really master that, when before I would make my content, I'd upload it, I'd have to go to all my side jobs. I don't have that anymore. I do this full time. So it's about like fixing what's not working and getting rid of things that just don't matter. So there's a lot of things in a video that just don't matter. And how do we get an audience to because now I'm thinking, I heard this on Mr. Beast, how do I get to 70% viewer duration? I'm at about 40 to 55%, which I think is pretty good. But how do you get to 70%? And, the theory that maybe 3 minutes into a video, you give somebody a new call to action or a new reason to stick around, like a second hook. These types of this is like, grad school level way of thinking, but it's what films do. They'll drop something in the middle of a movie. You think the guy knows he's going to solve the case, and then boom, new villain shows up. Like, you constantly have to give the audience more reason to stick around because you're telling YouTube, hey, this product's worth you investing in, and it doesn't work until it works. So for me, it happened with a specific topic that I was well versed in talking about, because I had spent years talking about this, and it happened when like for Dave Neal show, there's going to be some video that comes out that my channel is going to blow up because of it, and then I'll probably make 15 days in a row on that topic. I just don't know what that is yet. But you kind of got to be ready for it. So you got to be ready.
You want me to make a negative Dave Neal review that you can respond to?
Yeah. Wait for my hater accounts to come in.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know what I'm doing over there.
I'm doing it. Yeah. I'll be at the live tonight.
Go for
spamming
it.
the chat.
We've got there's no better thing for my channel to rally my commenters like somebody leaving a hateful voicemail, because we play it, we break it apart. And I've built up enough equity with my audience that they know I'm not trying. Like, I mean, I'll roast people. If you're going to come into my living room and have a problem, like, you're talking to a comic. I don't like if I'm on stage and some audience member heckles me and then I respond and the whole audience is cheering me on. That's a very soul-sucking feeling for that person. But you crack an egg to make an omelet. You have to keep things you have to keep the ball in your own court. So it doesn't feel good to like slam somebody, but sometimes you got to be like, listen, you are ridiculous right now, and I'm going to tell you why. And the audience lay feed off that stuff.
Has anyone ever gotten back to you that you've made like they gave you a negative comment, you made like a whole video series about them, and then they've responded back to you just mortified that they have now been personally covered, like their DM is now being showcased to everyone?
Well, I don't. Yeah, yes, but if someone's like, I just had this tiff over the weekend with somebody telling me like, all right, get to the point. I get that a lot. Yeah, get to your point. And you just like, yeah, it's so like insulting to me that I'll just like slam them. But I don't like dox people. I try not to. If I'm going to fight with someone and it's like a private DM, I probably wouldn't show their handle, because it's not about them so much as just like using them as fodder for the conversation. So there's no like, but this person called me a bully, and 99.9% of the people were like, Dave, you had absolute every right. That person was an asshole to you. There's an entitled feeling that audience have towards their creators that they can just talk to them any which way. And I try to keep it like a very two-way street. So it's like, if you're going to like slam me or leave a voicemail, we're going to make fun of it. I'm going to put your name on the soundboard. This one lady told me to cut the crap last year, and I've got my cut the crap button. Every time I need to play it, I play the button, and it's almost like parlaying hate into your own sort of like wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think I might have watched that video where that debuted, the cut the crap thing. What was that in relation to? Was that like Katie and Greg?
It was before that, and there was a lot of race talk happening, and I got a lot of calls from Southerners. And again, not just Southerners, because race isn't something that the South has to worry about and not the North. These racial conversations happen on every cul-de-sac in every state. And I just had people calling in that were like wildly not understanding why they were coming off so bad. And my channel has never been like bait. Like I don't bait these people on, but we expose it. This exists. This exists, that there's issues in the world, whether it be issues with domestic violence or race or whatever, all these different issues, they exist, and we get to talk about them through the lens of the show, and they can be highly triggering to certain people. But I honestly, I think my channel took off because a lot of channels wouldn't tackle these conversations, which to me as a comedian, it's like these are, they're not easy conversations to have, but it's easy to talk about difficult things because I'm not coming at it from a place of judgment. But if someone wants to call in and tell me about like why she thinks something that's kind of like maybe has racial microaggressions or whatever, you know, we're going to play it and our jaw's going to drop, but it's like, welcome to the United States. We all have different opinions. It doesn't mean everyone has the equal platform to share them, but if I can fry somebody's opinion and roast it or use it as an example as to why I don't believe that to be accurate, then that's what we do. And I think the audience at this point understands that that's part of the contract of the show. Some people still like this over the weekend. Some people still get very upset if I'll use their comment. And one person, you know, even threatened, I mean, someone threatened self-harm after, like, as a way to win an argument with me. And I was like, look, I'm not trying to, you know, like if there's some random YouTuber who's commenting hate and I spew it back at them, no one knows who they are. They can just go on with their life. And that's part of the problem with the negative comments, is that anybody can just leave a negative comment and go on with their life. But I'm kind of the one who's like, no, we're going to screen grab that and we're going to talk about why I think your comment's messed up. And people on my channel like that. And again, you would lose your mind if you did it in a way that was detrimental to your own, like a mental health. I'm not losing sleep over this or ruminating. I'm just going, your comment was ignorant and I'm going to tell you why. And you just add it to the conversation. And that's okay too. It's like if you're a teacher and someone asks a question that's kind of like stupid, it's like, good. If you had a dumb question, that means other people had the same question. So let's talk about it. And that's kind of the two-way, that's the only way I know to have a two-way conversation on an otherwise like one-way platform, is my voicemail number and comment sections.
Yeah, and the commenters, they feel so free to just leave them, because on YouTube they can't get like DM'd, and then they usually don't even have like a profile picture a lot of times. They don't have like really a social media presence. It's easier to just kind of unanimously throw out a comment. And then they're like, he's got like 50,000 subscribers. He probably won't even see this. So like I'm guilty sometimes too. I'll be like dropping like negative comments on big channels sometimes, and even though, you know, I'm a creator myself. But if there's one last thing I want to get from you that you're on an elite level at, that everyone that listens to this show is really trying to get to, it's to that point of not caring about other people's opinions as much as you can. So I liked what you said before about you got to crack an egg to make an omelet. I think that really made me realize, like, okay, yeah, it's like totally worth it in this, you know, in this case of what you were doing there. Is there other little lines that you tell yourself, or like when you had that stand-up show and you said that joke that, you know, really wasn't sitting with you after? What are some of the ways that you just learn to let these things go and, you know, just focus on the next piece of content?
Well, that stand-up show, I mean, that bothers me every time I think about it, but I use it to try to get better. It was a tough position to be in. I've got a corporate show coming up in a few weeks that I'm like, man, I don't want to bomb this show. I don't want to bomb at 11 a.m. in front of a bunch of people in Vegas. So we use sort of it's almost like using shame to like lose a little bit of weight. Oh man, I don't like the way I look. And people say, oh, you shouldn't shame others. That's for sure. But shame is kind of like a tool to use for yourself. So I don't like bombing. I don't like the feeling of bombing. So I'm going to work harder at stand-up so I don't bomb again. I don't like the feeling of not having my point, or having my point mischaracterized by a commenter. So I'm going to try my best to airtight lock my point down, because I have had Reddit threads where I wake up to saying, oh, Dave's this or Dave's that. And I go, no, I'm not. You're either mishearing what I'm saying, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, or I'm not doing a good enough job of prosecuting my point. So if the one thing I think I've learned from the conversation that I've had with people in Bachelor Nation is it's like the 4 agreements, one of which is be impeccable with your word. Like if I'm going to say something, I want people to know I've thought about this. Now, as a comic, there's plenty of things where I'm like, man, women are, you know, I'll just, you know, some hack women are this way, men are that way premise. I'll watch the show and be like, how come women always, get this and men, whatever. I'm not doing it because like I'm trying to have some serious conversation about gender. We're poking, we're prodding, and some people the tone doesn't come across, but for most people, like the other day, someone said in a comment section, "Hey Dave, why did you say you were going to get your lawyers to combat one of your commenters?" And I was like, "What are you even talking about?" And they sent me an old video where I was talking about lawyers, but it was like a complete joke. Like I was I hate it when people hide. Well, I was just making fun. It was so obviously a joke where I was talking about having my law firm get in touch with somebody over something that clearly anybody who knows my content knows it wasn't real. So it's like, I have to remember some people aren't gonna get my comedy, even if it's so laid out. Maybe English is their second language or they don't understand what I'm saying. That's okay. But for the majority of people, they're gonna understand where I stand on something, and if they want to push back on that, that's fine too. But I'm probably have already thought about my opinion, which of course we need to normalize changing of opinions with new information. Hey, I got it wrong. Here's what I think about this. Absolutely. I'm not running for office. If my opinion on something changes, absolutely. But I really think my audience can trust that I'm going to give them what I believe to be the truth of a situation, the way I see it, not just what some headline says or what the audience completely thinks, so I think it comes down to, like I've said a bunch of times, just trustworthiness. Now, that doesn't mean I'm like some be-all, know-all, but I'll tell people, hey, I know nothing about this topic, and then we'll Google it and look it up live, and we'll learn a lot. So there's plenty that, like I didn't know a thing about colorism till we talked about it, and then people were going, oh my gosh, Dave, this is amazing that you're talking about it. And I go, I'm just learning about this too. I'm not afraid to say I didn't get a doctorate's degree in the Civil War, so when people talk about the Confederacy, as some Rhode Island guy, I go, I don't know a thing about this. The only thing I know about the Confederacy is when I took a road trip to Louisiana and went to a gas station that was a Confederate. Like, I don't know anything about that. I'm not blaming my education. I'm just saying I'm willing to learn. And I think our channel constantly comes up with new things to learn about, because I'm not an expert on the Ukrainian war, but I want to know what's happening, and I want other people to be invested in these things as well.
If you're going to come out with 5 videos a day, obviously it's like got to come up at some point. If like every video is like over 8 minutes, then I mean, I don't know how you can keep going on just about, one Bachelor person's tweet. So I can totally see where it goes there. But I always do appreciate your perspective. I can tell that you're not coming from a point of trying to be an expert. You're always just very clear of exactly what your experience is on it. And then you've got, a few side jokes to keep it entertaining, and then boil it back into, how this relates to Tasha. So it's so it matches up with the thumbnail.
Yeah, if you ever see a comic who pretends to know everything, they're a fraud. We need to normalize we don't know much about anything, and then we can learn from there. But the whole internet's too big. I know about this. I mean, you got people telling you about the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's like, you don't know anything, Jan. Like, let's just all start from that common place of ignorance, which I think comics like to do.
I bet you got a lot of Jans in the comments.
A lot of Jans
against you, huh?
Yeah.
The Jan is another version of a Karen.
Yeah, but now I have to say, I've set my boundaries, and my audience is, I think, the smartest Bachelor audience. They're compassionate. They're seeing different sides to things. They're progressive minded and don't tolerate hate in the comment section. I really truly do think that we've got the best out there. And I've had contestants tell me that too. They go, geez, Dave, I did your channel and the comments I got were so supportive, so nice. I've had it from multiple contestants from multiple seasons have said it. And I think it's just a product of like not watching the show from a cynical place where it's like, let's hate on so-and-so, but just watching it like we're watching our buddy or our family member on the show.
Well, I got a lot of great stuff from you, Dave. Guys, if you want to keep up with Dave and see my negative reaction about Dave and then his reaction to it, my reaction, and so forth, be sure to subscribe to both of us on YouTube. I hope this finds a lot of people out there who are curious about how the inner workings of Dave's business works. And if not, hopefully, Susie Evans, it finds you and you did not win this season. And shoot me a DM.
Yes.
And I'm going to leverage Dave Neal's name to get this message to you. But Dave, really appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, nice chatting with you. Thanks for having me.